Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Thursday, February 20th. Hope everybody is having a great day so far. We have a lot to get into. Some massive news coming out of the NBA as Victor Wembanyama, the superstar Frenchman, has now come down with a blood clot and is done for the season, as well as Bobby Portis being suspended 25 games today for taking a banned substance. We also have some news out of the world of hockey, as the Four Nations Cup is about to start the finale between the US and Canada. We'll get into that game in just a bit. Then we will turn our attention over to some news in the NFL, as the cap has risen almost $20 to $25 million. Then we continue our series, previewing the offseason for the Carolina Panthers and the regular season for the Houston Astros. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday, February 20th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our first topic here, that having to do with the big news out of the NBA. Victor Wembanyama, the future superstar center for the San Antonio Spurs, is done for the season. He has been diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis in the right shoulder, which is just another way to say he has a blood clot. The Spurs say this is an isolated incident and that he should make a full recovery, but with a blood clot, there becomes a couple of different complications. This isn't the first NBA guy in recent history to have a blood clot, to have a similar injury. Obviously, Chris Bosh's career ended because of a blood clot. Now, his was more in the lung, so it's not in the same area. But the reason that he had to end his career is because it came back. He had the surgery, he came back, and then it came back again, and he had to take blood thinning medicine. If he got cut in the game, would have been too risky. So there's a really bad thing for this to end up being, right? This could be something that ends his career just 1.5 seasons into it. Brandon Ingram, another situation, he has come all the way back. He had a very similar blood clot in the shoulder. He won Comeback Player of the year after it happened. He had something called thoracic outlook decompression surgery. It's something that a lot of pitchers in baseball get when a similar thing happens. It's when you have a lot of motions with your arm going above the head. That, again, is pitching, is shooting. So that's something that has been shown to work. This is something that is going to be a major, major deal for the San Antonio Spurs as they were trying to make a playoff push. We had Victor Wembanyama, who was the league leader or the projected leader for Defensive Player of the Year this season, shooting 47% from the field, 35% from three on 8.8 attempts, along with 83% from the field goal, 24, 11, and 3, leading the league in blocks at 3.8 per game and 1.1 steals per game. He has been a menace on the defensive end as well as on the offensive end. This puts the Spurs in a tough position. The Spurs right now are at 23 and 29 on this season. They're just 4 games out of the 10 seed that would have gotten them into the play-in tournament. But now it feels like this season is more of just run it back for next year. You also have some issues with De'Aaron Fox, the guard that they traded for to pair with Victor Wembanyama. He's got an injured finger that has been requires surgery. He most likely will take the rest of the season off to get that fixed. But for the Spurs, for Victor Wembanyama, this is something that outside of this season, which is lost at this point, they can get another draft pick. They can go out and continue to build on what they've done already. The real concern is for his future. This is not something that they can guarantee is going to go away forever, right? This is not something that they can guarantee is going to be an easy fix. Again, we've seen guys lose their career over this. We've also seen guys come back just as strong. Brandon Ingram, as an example, there. So we're all hoping that Victor Wembanyama can come back and be amazing because what he's done in his first year and a half in the NBA, what he looked like he was on track to do was incredibly special. He already was the best defensive player in all of the NBA. His offense continues to get better as he continues to develop and get more players around him to help his game. He was already arguably a top 10 player in the NBA in the next couple seasons if he can get back out there. And this has been the concern with him his whole career, right? Through his early career, right? We've all been concerned about whether or not he could stay healthy as a 7'5" guy, right? And this is one of those freak things that just kind of pops up out of nowhere. Said he was feeling discomfort and a little bit sluggish after the All-Star game, got it checked out. Thank God they caught it before it got too bad. But this is something that obviously you're going to need to take time to recover. These are not quick things to fix, not quick things to recover from, and they are things that can come back. They're very dangerous. So he's done for the season now. Hopefully he can come back, and hopefully it is an isolated event. Against the Spurs, say it is an isolated event, so it should not be too big of an issue, but it is something to keep an eye on when he returns back to the court in the 2026-2027 NBA season. But outside of that, in the NBA, there were some more big news today as Bobby Portis, the backup center for the Milwaukee Bucks, was suspended 25 games for taking a banned substance. He ended up taking tramadol, a painkiller found in his system. He said it was a mix-up. He said he was trying to go out and take some Toradol. Toradol is another drug that does basically the exact same thing as tramadol. Tramadol was banned in the last off-season, so it hasn't been too long since it was, and maybe that was something that he used to take, had to switch over. This is a really rough loss for the Bucks, though, as well, right? We take a look at this Bucks team. This is a team that, despite having Giannis and Brook Lopez, is really not that deep at the front court. You have a guy in Bobby Portis who's always been a spark plug off the bench for them. The Bucks have been in a weird spot with this team, right? They made a move at the trade deadline, trading for Kyle Kuzma, trying to get moving off of a guy who just wasn't really working for them in Chris Middleton. They both needed changes of scenery, but this is a team that's kind of stuck in a weird spot. They're not in that top tier in the Eastern Conference, but they're also clearly better than a lot of these other teams. You have Damian Lillard, you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, but now they're at risk of falling out of the top 4 in the East. They're at risk of not hosting a playoff game this year for the first time in a very, very long time since Giannis has been there. And I'm really curious to see how this affects the Bucks. It's not good for their future. It's not good for their season. He should be back near the end of the regular season. The question is, how are the Bucks going to be until then? Without Bobby Portis, they're not going to have that spark plug guy. They're going to need Kyle Kuzma to really step up, really improve as he's shooting his worst of his career. Shooting splits are all down for Kyle Kuzma this season. Giannis has been playing amazing as of late, and Dame and him both made the All-Star game for a reason. But Giannis also dealing with an injury. We saw this really sink them in the playoffs last season. Can they go out and can they fix this issue? I'm a little bit concerned about the Bucks heading into the playoffs, but they should be able to have Bobby Portis back before the playoffs are done. Just not going to, most likely not going to be hosting anymore. But let me know what your thoughts are on either of these two things. Massive deals for two teams, one out in the East and one out in the West. We'll keep an eye on all the developing stories in the NBA, but we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the NHL. On the ice, one of the biggest hockey games in nearly 40 years. The USA hockey team is taking on the Canadian hockey team right now as the finals of the Four Nation Cup puck drop happened just about 10 minutes ago. We'll talk about what's going on in the game, what I expect to happen in the game, and why it's such a huge matchup in the first place. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports podcast.